Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the next session, VAZIL HUDÁK.
Thank you. I don't know where it's coming from, but it was very nice. We should use it more often. It helps with ego, you know, you feel so important. Anyway, thank you. Thank you to Tatra Summit and Globsec, of course, for doing this. Good morning to everybody. I hope that we will keep this good mood even after hearing more about the EU budget, upcoming EU budget, because there might be some sobering news maybe coming as part of the discussion. But I'm very happy and would like to welcome to this panel, excellent panelists. I would start with PAULA ZACARIAS, who is Secretary of State for European Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Portuguese Republic. Welcome. FRANTIŠEK RUŽIČKA, State Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of the Slovak Republic. Thank you. I don't think I need to introduce Fero too much. He's, as I just discussed with his wife, he's more on the road than at home, doing his European duties, both at home and in Europe. And then we have Mr. LEOŠ, DVOŽÁK, Director of the R&D Center at Valeo company in Prague. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I think we have a nice combination of public sector representatives, people who are engaged intimately in the discussions about the future EU budget, about so-called MFF, Multi-Annual Financial Framework. We have also a representative of the private sector, of a company. And this is exactly the kind of discussion and format we would like to have at the Tatra Summit, to look at European issues from different perspectives, from public and private. I myself, actually, I came across EU budget in different forms, but most recently when I was government plenipotentiary for the EU budget during the Slovak EU presidency in 2016. Very interesting experience. It was first time when because I think for every, I would say, average citizen, EU budget is something huge. You know, it's something that you can draw money forever. It's kind of milking exercise. So I was really shocked when I realized that actually EU budget is just 1% of GDP of the European Union in terms of the revenue side, and it's only 2% in terms of the overall public expenditures in the EU. So it's actually very little piece of the overall European financial structure and financial flows. But it's an important one because it is something where the European countries have to agree upon. It's a microcosm of all different interests between the net payers, net beneficiaries, east, west, north, south, whatever there is, different groupings. And I think during these discussions on the EU budget, you really understand who has what kind of view about Europe. And as we say, follow the money. You know, and when you follow the money, you really get to the real instincts and interests of different countries. And then, of course, when you get to these trilateral dialogues between the Commission, Council, and European Parliament, it's also a very exciting exercise, which usually goes to late hours of night or morning. So anyway, interesting experience. But now let's focus on the current negotiations about the MFF. I think we are all waiting what will come out of this. Much of that is cooking in the corridors of Brussels and recently in Luxembourg. Going to both of you, because you are really very much engaged, both Anna and Fero, and starting from Anna, I would like to ask both of you, what do you think about the current status of the negotiations? And if you were to identify 3 key challenges or problems. People don't like to talk about problems. Okay, so challenges for the negotiations. What do you think are the biggest issues now?
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, really. It's been very interesting to be with so many interesting people and many interesting debates that we had. Probably this panel on the MFF, well, money is always something that is relevant. We discuss the strategic agenda, we discuss all the challenges that the European Union has to face in recently, and with no money, it will be difficult to do anything. So we really have to put the money on the priorities that we find that are really relevant. And we identified in our discussions here many of these short-term and long-term priorities, and I think FRANTIŠEK can talk about this even more. But these priorities deal with the 3 C's that you were identifying yesterday, this famous coquelicot. Coquelicot.
It has become famous.
It's cohesion,
Yeah.
it's cohesion, it's climate, and it's competitiveness. Indeed, this is the combination. And somehow, these are the 3 pillars of the EU budget. Because it's a third of cohesion, it's a third, we don't call it climate yet, it's more agriculture. But when we say that 25% of the whole budget of the EU has to go to fight climate change, it's 40% of the agriculture budget that we are talking about. So there is this pillar that is also very fundamental, and then there is the competitiveness pillar. And there we have the digital agenda, we have the SMEs, we have the research and development, we have all the programs that are needed to push for EU competitiveness. And the 3 are totally intertwined, because it's all about what? It's all about investment. The EU budget is about investment, while at home we have to pay for the public services, for education, for health, and investment, but the EU budget is about investment. And this is really important, because when we see, and we were talking about the amount of money, we're talking about the amount of money. 2017 EU budget was 137 billion euros. This is more or less the same value. It's more or less the same value of a budget like a country like Austria or Belgium. So for the whole Europe. The total value of the EU budget is 50 times smaller than what we spend at national level. And this is so important when we talk about the investment, because it has to be done in all these forms. The investment is fundamental to get the citizens connected with the Union, because cohesion policies are the ones that bring citizens in connection with Europe, because they feel that there are new infrastructures, that there are new schools, that there are new hospitals, that there are new programs for skills, that there is Erasmus. So all these programs that bring people in connection to the European Union. Then there are the programs that bring business in connected with the European Union, with the financing and supporting for SMEs, for the new agendas like the digital agenda and others. And this is central with these new programs that we can talk about a bit later, InvestEU, Horizon Europe, and the new instrument for convergence and competitiveness. So it's all about investment, it's fundamental. Now, where are we? The leaders need to find an answer already now at this council, at this European Council in October. This whole exercise started in May 2018 with the presentation of the proposal by the Commission. This proposal says that the total budget of the European Union for the next 7 years, it's going to be 1.11% of the GNI of the 27. The discussion continued. The European Parliament says, no, it's not enough. We need more money if we are to keep what they call the traditional policies, cohesion and agriculture. We need to invest more. And we need to go up to 1.30% of the GNI. And then we have the net payers, the countries that say, well, we have to do a huge effort now that the UK is out of the equation, And for instance, Sweden says that they have to increase their payment to the budget by 45%. And they say, well, it's a lot.
Anna,
So-
maybe could you tell us, because maybe it's not known to everybody, who are the net payers? Who are the net payers to the European budget?
The net payers
Today.
are, better than say the net payers, I will put them in a group, the ones that don't want to increase the amount of the budget by more than 1%. 100. This is Denmark, it's Sweden, it's Austria, it's Finland, more or less. It's now also
Netherlands?
It's the Netherlands, and it's now Germany. Germany with a little bit more flexible position, saying 1% is the start figure for discussion. So 1.3 with European Parliament, 1.11 from the Commission, 1% 0.0 from these net payers, and so where do we stand? Where do we go? This is the big discussion. And the current presidency of the European Council, Finland, has produced already a paper for the discussion of our leaders in this context, for this, now in the European Council. So the leaders have to talk about this, the ceiling. How much globally are we going to put in this budget? Then they have to discuss the other very important aspect, which is the balance between the different policies. And I said that now it's not yet totally balanced, but it's more or less 1/3 agriculture, 1/3 cohesion, 1/3 competitiveness, let's call it like that, or centrally managed policies by the Union. A fourth element that the leaders have to discuss is conditionalities. Do we give the money to everybody, or would we put some conditions for people to receive this money? People, and particularly states. For instance, in terms of countries that are not fulfilling all the elements of the rule of law and the independence of their judiciary, could they be penalized in terms of not receiving the cohesion funds or other funds? So this is also a big discussion. And the fourth element, which is, okay, we want more money. We want more money, and the countries, some are willing to put a bit more of percentage of their GNI, but some don't want to put more. So why don't we find new own resources of the Union? Why don't we find some type of taxes or other resources that could be for the Union and come from the Union? For instance, a percentage of the CEO money that we pay when on the market. So a percentage of the money that is owned because of the market of the CEO, it could be put in in CO2. I'm sorry, CEO. No, CO2. I'm trying to sell CEOs. Oh my God!
I was worried you want to tax the CEOs of all the European companies.
We also want that.
Not a bad idea.
We also want somehow that, because there is also this long conversation about a tax on the big digital giants.
Yes.
There is also a possibility of a tax on plastic non-recyclable, tax on financial transactions. There are many other elements that could be seen. So the discussion for the leaders will be along these four big elements. They have to come out with solutions. We're not sure that this will happen. Maybe we'll have to continue discussing, maybe in November, but surely we need some solutions by the end of this year. It's only 14 months from now until the moment where the programs should start on the ground. And if we miss this 14 months, it's going to be a disaster for the beneficiaries of the program. So we need to work hard to have a compromise, if possible, by the end of the year. So these are the four elements of the discussion. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Fero, anything to add?
Thank you very much. You did my job too.
No.
I learned a lot. Now finally I understand why I'm going to Brussels. It was very, very, very good and very in a nutshell. I mean, really where we are, and maybe just a few remarks, if I may say here. I mean, trying to answer your questions from more general political rather view, since a lot of numbers were already mentioned. The first big challenge is, I mean, to get the budget on time and to get a budget, quality budget, and the budget that reflects the priorities that we are setting in the different documents, including the documents that we discussed at the Bratislava summit and then continued and finished and completed in Sibiu, which set a new strategic agenda. And there were a lot of talks, there were a lot of nice words, there were a lot of visionary suggestions, but now we have to convert it to the money, to the means. We have to find out the means for that. So that's the first challenge, to have the high-quality, modern, innovative budget at the time that we can start using that budget for improving the competitiveness, improving the growth and economy of European Union at the time when we should do it. The second big challenge is that sometimes, and it was said several times at several panels here, that we are living in a bubbles. And then really the thing is that when I'm hearing about these bubbles, when we were children, we had this bubble hook or whatever.
I remember.
We were making bubbles. And the thing is that now we have to get rid of these bubbles and really to understand that we are not making the budget for the European bureaucrat, for the European Commission, even not for politicians, but we are making the budget for people. Yeah. For 500 million people living in the European Union. So the thing is that we all know that we are living in a certain kind of the economic, geopolitical and political environment which is changing and which is not very conducive to the big ambitions. But the people that are living in Europe, they don't want to listen to the promises that in 7, 10, 20, 30 years it will be the paradise on the earth, but till then we have to go through the bumpy roads. So that will be the second one, I mean, to think about for whom we are discussing this budget. The third one is balancing, to find out the balance between the policies. And I really less and less like the divisions, old traditional policies and the new ones. All these policies are the part of the balanced Europe and balanced development of Europe. Without cohesion, you cannot have, or without continuing in cohesion, you cannot have the competitive Europe, because you will leave the weakest parts of the Europe still behind.
Yeah.
And it's not only about the economies, it's not only about the industries, but it's also about the technologies.
Yeah.
So now going back to something what is becoming now more and more viral, the conclico. Please do the hashtag conclico. I would like to add here one more letter. I would call
innovation.
It conclinco. Exactly. Convergence, climate, and now we had the discussions about the if it is innovations or if it is industries and competitiveness. Because these are the four elements which will create and can create the budget and the processes that will start the development of the European Union becoming the real world climate leader, or the leader in the fighting the climate change, the leader in the technologies, the leader in the disruptive technologies, because now look at the statistics or look at the numbers. Who are the leaders in the technologies? I mean, Europe is not among the top 3. Europe is not probably even among the top 10. Yeah. It's the US, it's China, and it's UK. And UK is leaving European Union. So we are losing the partner who is the leader, who has this kind of the leadership in the disruptive technologies. So if we don't find the balancing, because the worst thing that Europe can face in the future in applying the budget is that we are going to continue in divergences. And VAZIL mentioned two things, that I'm traveling quite a lot and traveling around Slovakia, and I see that if we would like to improve the living conditions and living standards of the many regions, we need to still invest to the infrastructure. Without infrastructure, there is no development of the regions.
Yeah.
The people will not identify themselves with the European Union. They will lose faith in the European Union, and this is the third challenge, which you ask us to define, that if we don't still continue in creating the project of the European Union for the people, then we are creating the people who don't feel that the European Union is their project. Because the unemployment is growing, because there are no opportunities, people have to migrate, find for the work, and they are looking for the cheap, easy, quick fixes, which are not easy, which are not neither cheap nor quick. And then the last point is, we are not going back to the bubbles. The European Union went through the last decades through several difficult periods, which were costly. It was the debt crisis. It was the migration. It is the Brexit. And these are the challenges that are real facts, that have the real impacts on the economies of the European Union and European Union countries. And the individual countries, because the impacts on the migration, for example, may be bigger felt in the countries that are recipients of the migrants, but the same effects of the Brexit will have the impact on Slovakia. So again, when we are discussing the budget of the European Union, is that we have to keep in mind also the internal economical, political and social dynamics of the European Union, which is again not as rosy as we would like to see, obviously with the anticipated economic recession. Yeah. So these are the 3.5 challenges I would like to keep in mind when we're discussing the budget. Not because we are back again in the business as usual. 1% on 1 or 1.11 or 1.3. But this is not the visionary discussion. This is the bureaucratic discussion that only sets up the number, but don't think about the visions, don't think about the people, and don't think about the project of the European Union.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. I think it was really excellent. And I think this correlation between the strategic vision, the new strategy, and then how it is translated into actual numbers and the budget, I think that's the big issue. And I think it's part of the frustrations of, if we are talking about the people of Europe, is that there is a disconnect between nice declarations and nice intentions and so on, and then what actually happens in reality. And reality is, and we came up with this nice COCLINCO now term, the cohesion, the climate, innovation or industry, and competitiveness. That when we look at Europe from the point of view of competitiveness, unfortunately we are falling behind. And we're always talking about this, that we need to spend more on competitiveness. It is important. Without this, we will not be able to sustain our social structure and Europe as such. But reality is that we are still spending around 1.5% of European GDP on R&D, while China and the United States are close to 3%. According to our calculations, our experts at the European Investment Bank, we would need to spend around 140 billion euro per year to be able to catch up to the level of China and the United States, which 140 is around annual budget allocation within the MFF, within the annual European budget. So it's a big number, a big market gap, as we call it, which can be filled only by bringing private sector into this. The public money is simply not enough. And I think one of the challenges of the EU budget is exactly how you create, by using public money in Europe, how do you create opportunities for private sector to join. So I'm very happy that we have LEOŠ here from Valeo, who is also in charge of R&D operations. And so I think it's now very kind of logical to ask you how you see. I mean, have you come to interaction with the European money budget? Has it helped you in any way? Because Ferro mentioned, State Secretary, that this is should be for people, but you are one of the people. What's your experience? Is it helping?
very good point. I'm one of the people, so I'm one of us, and I'm representing the company who is producing the product for us, for me as well, right? So, conclinco. I wrote this because it's horrible to remember. And of course, we as a company has to comply with this statement. We have to, because otherwise we cannot touch this public money. So why we need the money? Of course, as a company, we use public money. I will come into that. But why? Why we need this public money? Because company should be sustainable. This company was here before the EU started even. So there were no public money available, so company has to sustain without this money as well. But it can help us, and with what? Can help us with the speed, can help us with the flexibility, and with the efficiency, right? And this is what I, as a person, look for. Because if I'd like to get this is why I'm having it here, I don't want to chat, just having it as an example. What is the innovation cycle for the products at this moment? For the consumables, it's starting to be 3 months. It used to be a year. Now it starts to be 3 months, generically 6 months. And if I'm looking for the funding, for the public funding, the preparation of the call on the state level takes about 6 months. Then we have 1 month to 6 weeks to prepare the project. And then it takes 1 year to get the money, right? And I need to get it on the market in 6 months. So it is what we basically struggle with, or where we need to have some improvement. Then the upfront, the preparation phase will be shorter. We will have more time to prepare the project. Because if, as a corporation, we have 1 month to prepare the project, usually we need to stay on the safe side. Because if we fail with delivery of the project, we need to return all the money. So we need to stay on the safe side, so we stay generic. So we are doing something, for example, research of no-go ways. So here not to go. Is it bringing to me as a person something? Not really. So we need a little bit more time for preparation phase. And of course, when we are ready, when we launch the project, we need fast and professional evaluation and quick decision how to get the money. Right? This is, I would say, the critical for the business, have this money really available fast away. I cannot criticize the structure, how it is prepared, because there is a so big variety of the funding. Before this discussion, we spoke about if there is some scheme for investment, because today's funds are mostly for project in terms of hours for research, for example. So I can get some money which I can use for research, but I cannot purchase technology which I need for this research. I need to invest into it. And in many cases, these new technologies are very expensive. Another things, what I miss as well is faster speed, again, for infrastructural investment. For example, 5G network. You know, I'm part of the automotive industry and involved in the automotive cars, autonomous cars, self-driving cars, robo-cars. And of course, we have today the car which can drive itself. We have a couple of cars which can drive from Paris to Prague, which can drive along the Czech Republic. We miss legislation, right? We cannot do it publicly. But why I started with that? For the car, we need communication. And really reading the environment around the car, and the sensors of the car can now look 300 meters surrounding around the car. But we are collecting, this car collecting about 0.5 terabyte of the data per minute. And 0.5 terabyte is 10 films, 10 HD films per minute. We are testing 1,000 cars, right? We need infrastructure. We don't have infrastructure. Yeah. And if the 5G network will be here in six years' time, well, maybe we need 10G already, right? So speed, again, of investment is very important for technological company. Maybe R&D are looking a little bit upfront, 5-10 years, but still, right? The speed is the most important for the support of the private companies, which are generating this GDP, which can be then again distributed. All right, thank you.
Brad, I think this was very important about the speed, because I think this is one of the weaknesses of Europe, that until we negotiate everything and all 28 or eventually maybe 27 agree, it takes a long time. Chinese by that time already built the highway between Beijing and Shanghai or whatever. So yeah, it is something to tackle. I would like to spend a little time on the issue of cohesion because it is important. Certainly both Portugal and Slovakia are cohesion countries. I'm in the same family of the Friends of Cohesion. But this is also one of those envelopes which may suffer from the budget cuts and from reorientation to other priorities. In the last proposal, if I understand correctly, from Finland, from the Finnish presidency, basically the drop in the level of revenue for the overall budget or the envelope would mean the overall drop in the size of the budget, of the EU budget, by around 55 billion. And this may be translated into cohesion somewhere around 25, 29 billion cuts in the cohesion envelope, which is quite significant, obviously. It would influence each country. Question to you, Anna, is because Portugal has been very successful, I think, in using cohesion funds in its history. I think there is, and when I also negotiated the EU budget during the Slovak presidency, one of the rhetoric or aspects, questions which was raised mostly by net payers was that we cannot create kind of cohesion dependency in your country. You should not be dependent, and your economy cannot be dependent just on cohesion funds and on grants, on the money you do not have to repay. And you have to start to behave also in a kind of market way. And part of that was introduction of the financial instruments, especially in the form of Juncker Plan and then the European Fund for Strategic Investments. My question is, how you in Portugal, how do you see this mix, and what are successes or failures in terms of bringing financial instruments into Portugal, identifying bankable projects, kind of blending the typical cohesion funding with this new form of financial instruments?
Well, I think in Portugal, the difference between, as you said, cohesion money and the rest of the money is that the cohesion fund has national envelopes. So from the outset, we know that a certain amount of money that we can use during the next 7 years. And this is fundamental also for the national authorities in terms of programming. So you know that you have all these funds need co-financing from the part of the state. So it's not just a grant, you have to co-finance this project, but you have an horizon. You see, in the next 7 years, I need to build a road, or I need to do some structuring or restructuring of the interior. For instance, in Portugal, we're having this huge problem of the area along the coast where people come to live with wonderful big cities, but then they leave the interior and there's nobody there, and there is only old people there. We need to do something to push young people to go back, not to a desolated area where they only can have the old ways of agriculture, but to do things that are new rural development, new projects, investing in technology also for agriculture. So this is the difference. You have, on cohesion side, you have an envelope that is a national envelope. On the other programs that are centralized by the European Commission, you have to compete with other countries to get some of that money. And it's for countries, it's for companies, it's for investors, it's for research centers. So people have to be able to compete for that money. And that is good. That is absolutely wonderful. And I do understand that there will be a moment, hopefully, where we won't need any more cohesion funds, in the sense that we all will be on the same level playing field. All countries will be able to invest, because it's about investment. But look at the country like Portugal. We had this terrible situation with the crisis. there is, even today, a huge investment gap. To get out of how do you get out of a crisis? You have to put money into the economy so that it starts booming again. But what if you can't put money in the economy, because otherwise you will have a huge debt, a huge public debt? So you need to have some other way of having this money to invest. And it helped us. We are out of the crisis. We got out of it. And we are really producing more, exporting more. Our GDP per capita increased. And so somehow, and our Czech colleagues say the same, it's understandable that there are some cuts in the cohesion policy for me, because there will be probably other countries that need now more than I do. But this is still fundamental, because as FRANTIŠEK was saying, there are still areas that are very, very poor, that do not match with any other region, not only in Portugal or Slovakia, but in Germany, in France. It's like a family. If everybody is, the whole family is much better if there is a level playing field. It's everybody has more money and has more richness. If not, you will have one member that is not able to take care of himself or have a problem, and the whole family will suffer. That's why we say it's fundamental to have cohesion and convergence. We need to converge all together for the same level. Then they talking more specifically about these programs that are for investment. For instance, the EU Invest, the new one that is proposed by the Commission, is a very important program, because it combines grants, a portion of the budget on the value of 15.2 billion euros. This is part of the money from the budget. But then there is a guarantee. And this guarantee is on the value of 47.5 billion. So with the money and the guarantee, we can push for a private investment of more than $650 billion or euros. So it's fundamental also for the whole of Europe, this, and for the small. And where are we going to spend this money? It's for infrastructure, it's for research, it's for the digital agenda, and the 5Gs and all the new things that we need to do, artificial intelligence, and not just for research. It's beyond research. It's to actually produce. And for SMEs and for skills. Skills are fundamental. We need to prepare new generation of people and old people for this new labor environment that we have. Then we have Horizon Europe. For the first time, the Commission is proposing 100 billion. We are always talking about 7 years. So 100 billion euros for Horizon Europe to promote innovation and to promote research. And this is also fundamental. Without this money, the Union will be down. And finally, there is a smaller program which is now under discussion, which is called the Instrument for Convergence and Competitiveness. This is fundamental for the Eurozone. Because when we got into the Eurozone, for instance, Portugal, when we got into that, we wanted, because we said that we are going to be more integrated in the Union, but the moment we got in, we are not ready yet. So we started a process of divergence. Our economy started to diverge for the first time when we got the euro. So there is something that has to be there to make in sort that the countries that are in the Eurozone have the budgetary instruments so that things go well for everybody, and that we, in case of a crisis, we have the necessary instruments in place. So this little instrument, it's only 17 billion euros, will be the embryo of a Eurozone budget. So it's also an important structure. And this is where we are. And so you see, we need money, we need grants, certainly. This is also important for agriculture, for our farmers, for rural development. but it's also important to have the other instruments that give clout and make it much more bigger in terms of investment in connection with private funds.
Yeah, I can only confirm because actually European Investment Bank is in charge of the European Fund for Strategic Investments as part of Juncker plan, and you can really see how the public money, the efficient use of public money can leverage private sources and other investments. And if you look at the effect, as you mentioned, Anna, that by utilizing 21 billion of the guarantee from the EU budget, and by bringing private investors into this, we were able to create the overall investment impact of over 400 billion euro. I mean, it's a huge leverage which can be created by efficient and smart use of public resources from the EU. So I think this is one of the ways forward. But Fero, maybe State Secretary, to continue on this Koklinko famous thing, because sometimes it seems to me that we maybe are a little stuck in this cohesion versus climate versus agriculture. You know, it's like a silo thing. You know, and we do have because of the EIB, we are kind of in the process of transforming into climate bank. Sounds good, and but there is a worry of several people that this will actually have a negative impact on the money allocated to cohesion. And I want to ask you also, based on your personal experience and what you see, feel, etc., is it a necessary clash between cohesion and climate, or cohesion and innovation? Can we somehow, you know, in a smart way, combine these things?
Provided we are smart.
Yeah.
So we can do it. No, just I'd like to say a few words because again, Anna Paula really framed it, and then she really very well described, I mean, the situations where we are and in the negotiations. I think that what we are talking and what we are saying about the cohesion is not fair. Because cohesion is not only taking and giving money. Cohesion is something that when we look at the whole money cycle that comes to the cohesion, where it comes from the cohesion, that they create, I mean, the better conditions for the industry developments in the certain countries, in the certain parts of the regions. So it means it creates profits, it increases the standards of lives of the people, their employment, it creates dividends. And when you look at the Slovak industries and the Slovak economy, most of these dividends are going back to those who are investing in Slovakia, in the regions where we improve the infrastructures. So it's not fair really to say that they are only the givers and takers. So we should probably if you would like to be visionary, we have to get rid of this. The second, little bit making it lighter, during the quite short night, I had a dream.
after a lot of wine and Slivovica.
I had a dream that I saw Slovakia as a net payer.
You see, that's what you get when you put too much wine into State Secretary.
And I see the Slovakia as a net payer because it finishes all the discussions about, I mean, it means that our people are rich.
Did you talk to Kamenetsky, to Minister of Finance?
Oh, well, not yet. So it means that the economy is strong, that the economy that we can really are not anymore having the discussions comparing, I mean, what is the salary in Slovakia, what is the salary in Germany. This means that it is our ultimate goal is not to be forever the cohesion country. It would not be ambitious, it would not be visionary. But then, of course, that was a short night, I woke up, and I realized that we will not finish during the Finnish presidency the discussions about the budget.
Can we bring more wine?
This is serious discussion.
Sorry about
So
that.
the thing is, we are ready, and when we look at the numbers, because of the economic development, etc., Slovakia is ready, for example, to increase the contributions to the budget almost by 60%.
We too.
Great.
And then I hear from Sweden that, well, we also increase our contribution by 45%. I said, okay, but look where you are, and 60% we are ready, and we have to also sell it politically back at home. From 6 billion, we go to 9 billion. I don't know, Peter Javorčík is here. Maybe I got the wrong numbers, but more or less comparing it to that. The second is we are cutting and we see unbalanced cuts in the cohesion policies and agricultural policies. 23, 27%. So altogether, we are at somewhere at the 10, 15, 20%. So the thing is, the balancing act is here the key. We are ready to increase the contributions, but also we don't want to see, that the cuts in the policies that are bringing the benefits and profits to all member states are inadequately cut. And now, connecting the cohesion and technology. I'm not the savvy technologist or IT guy, but for example, when we agreed with the 25% part of the paying to the budget for the climate and for improving the technological part of it. The thing is that we can also build the smart highways. We have to look from the perspective of the thing that the part of the investment to the infrastructures, to the highways, to the roads, can be also done in the way of helping the new technologies, the automatic or cars, the electric cars, to get the network of the loading stations, the network of the transmission stations for the data. We can do that. The same when we talk about the increasing of the contributions to the regional development. We are talking that the part of that investment that will go there will create better environment. Will go to the bigger and better environmentally friendly technologies. This is what we are talking about. So we can do a quantum leap when we do it smartly, combining the cohesion with the new technologies, with the climate policies, and with the incoming technology revolution that comes with the IT, with the artificial intelligence, with 5G, 7G, whatever G7. So we can do that. But we have to think in perspective. This is not abruptive change in the society from tonight to tomorrow. It's the change in 30 years when we look at the carbon neutrality by 2050. And we have to start now, like we started in Slovakia back 30 years ago. Who would imagine that Slovakia, after 30 years, will be the Euro member and will be the biggest car producers per capita in those 30 years. So we need that vision for the implementation and combination of the cohesion policies, cohesion spendings, and the technology and ecological spendings. And I think that we can do that.
Right, I'm really very happy to hear that, and especially that politicians have this view, which is very much non-silo view, which I think we need in Europe. And I'm going to LEOŠ, and then I would like to have a few questions before we end. You probably have some reactions to what was said, but also one specific question, because I already mentioned at the beginning that the EU budget is in the overall space of financing and financial flows in Europe is actually small. It's 2% of the overall expenditures, but it's very important from the point, on one hand signaling, but also pushing priorities on the European level. And as you mentioned, also very important in terms of developing different types of connectivities, in terms of infrastructure, transport, but also in terms of human relations and human mobility and so on. What I want to ask is, when you mentioned 5G, autonomous driving, etc., obviously these are issues which are of European nature. And I think what we are lacking in Europe today, and as FRANTIŠEK mentioned, we for Europe for people, we are lacking European projects. We are very much kind of working on our national little, area and issues, but we are lacking really those European projects which would excite people. And I'm wondering whether, from kind of private sector point of view, could you see that such issues as 5G or whatever G, as you mentioned, but autonomous driving, etc., which are really cross-border things. You cannot stop when you have autonomous car, yes, you cannot stop at the border between Slovakia and Czech, and what then? Yeah, just bring it on your shoulders, or I don't know. But how do we, or how can Europe and European budget, European thinking, European money, how could it promote more of this kind of cross-border, European type of thinking and projects?
I would start
Please,
a bit here. you very nicely mentioned this need for interaction of different things. And the same is for the technology. Because imagine, you are driving the car, you are approaching the city, and you would like to park somewhere, right? What to do, right? You are a foreigner, you came from somewhere. And then imagine that their building is connected to the network, and you have an address, so you look at the address, and the car automatically talks to the building, and the building will tell to you that at the 3rd floor, you have dedicated parking lot for your electric vehicles, and there's, by the way, the charger which fits to your car. Your car will tell to the building, hey, I'm driving big SUV, not anymore in the future, but at this moment, driving big SUV. Outside temperature is 40 degrees C, and I'm going down to cooled garage. So the building responds with a bit energy to keep the temperature in garage reasonable, because there's plenty of cars which are coming in. And then recuperation system starts in the building, right? And at this moment, what I'm seeing in the funds, that there are funds for the buildings and for the mobility. There's no overlap. Another thing, very important thing for us is safety. And even the car has been looking around, as I said, 300 meters, we cannot see through the building. So there's a junction and there's a building at the corner. So we cannot see behind the corner. Even radar cannot do that. But there are pedestrians who are approaching the crossing, and all of them are having mobile phones. All of them. They are coming, and we know the speed, we know the trajectory, and we know the proximity when the car will approach the person. And then we can slow down the car, and car can communicate to car behind and car up front that there is a change of the speed. And again, we are lowering emission because the car is not braking and not adding the pedal. No, it's slowing down and saving energy. So this is this overlap of all the funds which is available and a bit siloed time to time. So this integration of the funds would be, I would say, big help. And for this cross-border, to get back to your question, of course, as a nature, our company is international, right? So, of course, we've been looking, and now I'm going a little bit aside of the finances. We are looking for the legislation which would enable really drive the cars. I don't know how much you are familiar with the scaling of the autonomous driving. It's level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Level 2 is today, you all know these parking pilots and speedometers, the tempomats. This is level 2. Information given to you that something is going on. Level 3, for easiness, is eyes out of the street. You do not need to observe the street. Level 4 is mind out of the street. You can do whatever you wish, whatever pleasant, preferably reading the book. And level 5, you are missing steering wheel, right? So this is basically how it is scaled for autonomous driving. And it is scaled across Europe. Mm-hmm. I think it's scaled even over the globe. So it is known. So legislation must be basically set up for these levels across the Europe. And there are certain activities in Germany, I know about it. Now our parliament started to discuss to adopt this German legislation. So it's part of the answer. Yes, Europe is aware that you cannot stop at the boundary, put your car to the backpack and continue walking. Of course, you cannot do it. But as the mobile phones started in past 30 years, 40 years back, you had certain areas where you could use the mobile phone. With the autonomous car, it will be the same. Urban areas with all the infrastructure will be much more equipped for these autonomous cars. Highway, most probably, will follow. Country roads will be the latest. So even this autonomous mobility will go step by step. How the technology will work with that is that the car will reach the area and the driver will be sleeping. So what cars will do? Will try to awake, because in car it's a lot of systems which can help to awake the driver. And if the driver will still sleep, the car will park and wait until the driver is up, right? So it's safe, or at least we as a technologist are thinking this way, how to promote it. But you're absolutely right. It is cross Europe, cross the globe rules which need to be implemented.
Great. Thank you. I can't wait to have this situation, because then also František will be able to sleep more and will have all these nice dreams
And dream more,
about
and
Slovakia.
dream
And dream more,
So we are
especially.
supporting good
But
dreams.
this is exactly what we are talking. I mean, but this was the really scientific and really expert and professional look and the explanation how it could be and how we can, for example, when we project the new infrastructure, the highways, parking lots, the railroads, that we already think not on the level of the current today's level of understanding or the knowledge, but that we think it from the future, that we are going to have these cars, for example, by 2030, 2040. So by then, I mean, we have to have the infrastructure that will be friendly for these kind of cars. So it's easy to, not easy, but it is possible to combine.
It's a very, very good point. At this moment, how we build a supporting infrastructure, for example, on highways, we are having these big displays. Why? We can have beacons, Bluetooth beacons every 100 meters, cost $1, and you can have every millisecond information for your car. And the car can be far more flexible than you drive 20 kilometers, and after 20 kilometers, you will know that you will queue for 20 kilometers. It's too late. Right? And technology is available, and it's not expensive. We are just not doing it. We are laying the tarmac, and we are not laying them infrastructure underneath.
I have to apologize because we are already at the end of our time, but I would like to still have about 5 minutes because we started about 5 minutes late. So 5 minutes for maybe 2 questions, please. Yeah.
I will be very quick. You, State Secretary, had a good dream during the night, and I have a bad dream during the day, looking at the EU Regional Competitiveness Index of 2019. And what I see here are multiple shades of green, mostly in Western Europe, and multiple shades of purple, mostly in Southern, Central, and very bad in Eastern Europe. So it's very nice what we discussed here, but how do we ensure that the next MFF is not failing almost a third of Europe? The same way we look at this map, and in 7 years down the road, these colors are mostly similar. And that against the backdrop of the declared synchronized economic slowdown by the IMF the days before Tatra Summit.
And maybe, because I think it's probably linked from Rado, Danilak.
Will we be answering one by one or multiple questions?
No, you can ask questions.
Yeah, so very similar question, you know, these are these visions which they require underlying technology. And, you know, from self-driving car to smart cities and so on. And to build this product, we need certain components to that. And, you know, Europe is missing fundamental, for example, semiconductor industry, and US is competitive, China is competitive, and you know, to build successful self-driving car, you need components which Europe doesn't produce and is falling behind. And to realize this dream, we need some pieces around. How do you see making this priority? Because in the future, even toaster, you will be unable to manufacture without some AI components what we don't have. And how to get there to fulfill these dreams?
So can we maybe start with František, then to Anna and LEOŠ? Quick answers, if I may ask.
Now I'm becoming the high-tech especially. First, I mean, we know about these numbers, and that's why we ask for the balance budget and convergence in every area, because that divisions are also the part of the divergences. That, for example, we on one hand, we would like, and we have to, if Europe as a whole would like to be competitive in the technologies, I mean, we have to use the centers of excellence. But if we are only selfishly using the centers of excellence and not bringing the other capacities from the regions you've mentioned in Central, Southern, or Eastern Europe, then we are creating the division, and the Europe as a whole does not become more competitive. So that's the first. And the second, for using the special metals and other components what we need, for the production of that, I mean, one of the projects that was also started here, we are talking about the electromobility, and we are talking also about the independence from the batteries. And one of the key elements here is, I mean, to build up the industries across the Europe that will help us to meet the goal of the 30% of the cars used on the electric engine, with the electric engines by the 2030. And the same we have to use in building the components, semiconductors, etc., which we have to focus on, because the same is with the 5G, and we can have another 1 hour discussion about where our data may end up if we don't do it smartly too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anna.
think, technology is the word. We need to work, and this is an effort that every single member state needs to do itself. It's also an issue for governments, for industry, for companies. But because, again, the EU budget is just 1% of the GNI. So it's a little drop of water in the big amount of money that we are all spending in this. So it's not just the EU money, it's better coordination amongst member states to work better on the excellence centers, to find out what is my expertise that I can combine with FRANTIŠEK expertise, that we can build one of those components that we need for the cars or for the batteries or for something else. So it's a more cooperative approach that we need to find, and this is a whole different level also of working at the EU level. Not just EU as the EU institution, it's the EU with member states working together to do something. But this means that we have to be more convergent. We have to increase the good competitiveness that will bring Europe as a whole as a big political actor, as a big actor in terms of technology in the world, as a center for innovation. So it's fundamental that we work better in this cooperative way. And the other important thing is that we do not work in silos. The Commission is trying to work better, interact, putting things together. It's not really one program here, one bubble, another bubble. It is difficult, but it's the way. We have to do it. It's our mind has always this philosophical view that we have to separate. When we look at the flowers, we separate one by one, and then to understand the bouquet, we have to put them together again. So it's like this that our mind works. So we have to see how can we work better in this cooperative way, and how we work without this silos trying to fill the gap that we have.
Thank you. LEOŠ.
Very good point. Microchips. Yeah, I'd say only Intel. It's not in Chinese hands, and it's question mark in which hands is Intel today. And microchips are driving everything. What is good that Europe took it seriously, and Europe trying to have a lead in case of cybersecurity. But the flame is here, and we are trying just to put it out of flame. It was a very good point. But for the private sector, start the fundamental research in the area of the high density silicon. No way. It have to be European program, because public sector, I am not so sure that is able even to finance such a huge project. But yes, microchips should be considered.
Thank you. We have to finish, so I would like to thank our panelists, Anna, FRANTIŠEK, LEOŠ. I think they deserve applause. And I believe it's people who lead the negotiations about the MFF that the next budget will be not only in the dreams, but it will be also a reality. So thank you all also for coming here and being with us. Have a nice afternoon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.